Wow, for an early game summoner approach, that worked surprisingly well on Master Mode. Hey there, my name is Salandrak and welcome back to another episode of my Terraria Journey's End Beginner's Guide series. In this episode, we're going to be taking down the Brain of Cthulhu in all difficulties, Classic, Expert, and Master Mode. As always, timestamps are down in the description and let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. Also, if you find this type of content helpful, informative, or at the very least somewhat entertaining, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to help the channel. Now let's get to it! The Brain of Cthulhu is generally the second boss you'll face in worlds that have Crimson as your evil biome. There's no hard and fast rule that says you have to do it after the Eye of Cthulhu, but as you learned from my guide on that first boss, there are a lot of items that can be crafted from your world's evil ore that require additional ingredients that can only be obtained from the boss of the evil biome. So that's why it's pretty common to do it second. Master of the Crimson, there are two ways to summon the Brain of Cthulhu. The first is by smashing 3 Crimson Hearts that spawn in the bowels of the Crimson's cave systems. Until you're able to make a Deathbringer pickaxe from Crimtane bars or get a stronger pickaxe, the best way to gain access to these hearts is explosives, and once close enough, they can be smashed with any hammer and also blown up with a bomb. And every 3rd heart smashed will bring out the brain. But in addition to summoning the boss, each heart you smash has a chance to drop valuable goodies as well, including the Undertaker gun that always drops from your first heart broken, which if you haven't gotten him yet will allow you to get the Arms Dealer NPC. There are 4 other items you can get from the Crimson Hearts. The Panic Necklace accessory increases your movement speed by a whopping 50% for 8 seconds after taking damage. It can be crafted into a Band of Star Power, a mana boosting accessory that used to be unique to the Corruption, and can also be combined with the Bee Queen's Honeycomb to make the Sweetheart Necklace that, in addition to the movement buff, will summon protective bees when you get hit. The Rotten Fork is a spear type weapon that works fairly well against the boss on all difficulties. And finally there's the Crimson Rod, a magic weapon that places a rain cloud that drops death on your foes and also works well against the brain. Oh, and there's also a Crimson Heart Vanity Light pet you can get, which makes a glowing heart thing bounce around following if you're into that sort of thing. Ugh. The other way to summon the Brain of Cthulhu is to craft a bloody spine at an evil altar using 15 vertebra, which drop from pretty much any Crimson mob, and 30 vicious powder purchased from the Dryad during a blood moon or crafted from vicious mushrooms that grow in the Crimson. As for a fighting arena for the Brain, this isn't a fight where you need a lot of mobility. Each Crimson area generally has at least one large chamber that is more than big enough for the fight, though I generally like to wall it off so that mobs from off-screen don't interfere. Several rows of platforms are helpful, and be sure to add at least a campfire. If you need extra help, toss in a heart lantern, star in a bottle if using magic weapons, and add a honey bath for added regen if needed. As for buffs, on lower difficulties you really shouldn't need any buff potions or food buffs, but they certainly can help on higher difficulties. The fight is pretty easy though, and with proper preparation you should do just fine with the basics. A well-fed or exquisitely stuffed food buff, iron skin, swiftness, and regeneration should be enough, adding mana regen and maybe magic power if using magic. Before we talk about gear, let's go over the fight itself. As with many bosses in Terraria, the Brain of Cthulhu fight has 2 stages. In stage 1, the brain will spawn with 20 creeper eyeballs floating around it, which will periodically charge out at the player while the brain itself will teleport to a different location every couple of seconds. The brain is invulnerable to damage until all the creepers are dead, but since the creepers tend to congregate near the brain, you'll still want to generally aim in that direction. In Classic difficulty, the damage from the creepers isn't too bad, but in Expert difficulty and higher, they will add 1 of 9 different debuffs of varying durations whenever they hit you, and these things stack and can get pretty nasty if you get very many of them on you at once. So keep moving and try to avoid getting hit as best you can. Spectre boots, fledgling wings, and other jump boosting items are very helpful, and if on Expert or higher, be sure to use your Shield of Cthulhu to dash away when needed. The beginning of the fight is the most dangerous when all 20 creepers are flying around, but as they start to get picked off, it gets easier and easier to avoid taking damage. The creepers have a 50% chance to drop a heart that will heal you for 20 health, and will drop crimtane ore and tissue samples, which are the additional crafting ingredient needed to make the rest of the evil ore weapons, armor, and tools. So even if you don't beat the boss the first try, there's a good chance that if you destroy enough creepers, you might be able to make some more upgrades. Once all the creepers are dead, phase 2 begins. The brain will open up, revealing a heart inside that has an eyeball, and it will teleport more frequently and start moving towards you. In this phase, it is very important to use a weapon with knockback, as the brain is susceptible to this and the knockback will help keep it away from you. It is also helpful to move away from the brain as soon as it teleports. In expert difficulty or higher, the brain will also have 3 mirror images that will appear as mere illusions meant to confuse and distract you. They start out really faint, but as the fight goes on become more and more solid and hard to distinguish. Only the real brain will take damage, but here are a couple of tricks to help you stay on target. If you have good peripheral vision gameplay skills, you can watch your minimap to see where the real brain is in relation to your character, as only the real boss shows up on the map. Move away from the real one and target in the direction of the boss until it is dead. If you prefer to focus on your character movement will also expose the fakes, as they will move rapidly as you move, whereas the real brain's motion remains pretty constant. It takes some practice, but overall the fight isn't too bad even on higher difficulties. If you're doing a For the Worthy world, the boss moves faster, hits like a truck, there are 40 creepers, and in phase 2 the images are solid looking the whole time. And if you're playing For the Worthy Master Mode, well, good luck. This fight is extremely RNG based, as the boss likes to insta-gib you by teleporting right on top of you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it, so pray to RNGesus. But now that we've covered the fight mechanics, let's talk about gear. If you're new to the game, it's a good idea to have a full set of metal armor, at least iron, lead, or better, and on the higher difficulties, gold or platinum is preferred. On classic difficulty though, the fight is actually quite easy and it can be done with base life and no armor at all, but on higher difficulties you may want to get max life before taking on the boss, and decent armor is definitely a good idea. As with pretty much all boss fights, mobility items are key for the fight. At the very least, you'll probably want to have a pair of Spectre boots, which are made by combining any speed boots with the rocket boots sold by the Goblin Tinkerer. Fledgling wings from sky crates and chests are also helpful, as are any of the various double jump items and their upgrades. If you're on expert or master mode, the Shield of Cthulhu is great for getting out of harm's way fast. As far as weapons go, the key features to look for are knockback, high attack speed, and if ranged, piercing weapons, especially in phase 1. On classic difficulty, you can beat the boss with really just about anything. Guns work fine, whether it's the Undertaker, a boomstick, or the Mini Shark. Bows with Jester's arrows work pretty well, or you can even just use Shuriken for phase 1 and throwing knives for phase 2. If you spent much time in the Antlion Desert, bone throwing knives work great for both phases, even on Master Mode, and especially if you make the throw damage boosting Fossil armor set. If you want to go melee, then the Rotted Fork is a great option on all difficulties, especially if you have some feral claws from the jungle that make all melee weapons have auto swing. If you favor magic weapons, Emerald, Amber, Ruby, and Diamond Staves all pierce one enemy and work pretty well, as does the fast-firing Thunder Zapper from the Antlion Desert. There aren't a lot of options for summoners at this stage of the game, but even the Flinx staff, supported with a Flinx coat and a well-modified Snapthorn from the jungle with feral claws, works surprisingly well even on Master Mode. And as an added benefit, summoned minions will immediately attack the real brain in phase 2, making it easy to distinguish from the false ones on expert or higher. And once you've beaten this boss a time or two, you'll be able to upgrade to the Deathbringer pickaxe and the Crimson armor set, both of which will help propel you along on your journey. But you might be thinking to yourself, Salandrak, what the hell? Here you are talking about all these different damage types, but you haven't even covered classes yet in the guide series. Well, be sure to stick around, as we'll be covering that soon enough. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!